This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
Okay, you got it. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome one and all. Lembit Öpik here on Lembit Öpik Live on Unprecedented TV. If you're watching this live, hope you had a good weekend. Australia hasn't. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment. But before we go any further, let me do the advert. Please do subscribe to Unprecedented TV. Just click, like, subscribe, because that helps us build our station and hopefully a platform for free speech. Our goal isn't to beat the mainstream media. It's to be the mainstream media with the most honest reporting that anyone can possibly achieve. We express our views as well, but we never just dress those up as facts. We just express them as opinions, and that's what you're here, hopefully, to develop as well. Your understanding of the world. You may or may not agree with the guests that we have. We always like to hear from you as well, because it's an ongoing dialogue. So please also follow me at Lembit Öpik on X. Now, to the matter in hand, if you're watching this live, you'll be aware of the fact that there's been a very substantial shooting in Australia, Bondi Beach, a very famous beach around Sydney area. And the number of deaths has been going up and up and up, double figures now, with a large number of people, wounded, scores of people, in fact, due to either 2 or 3 gunmen. Still a bit of confusion about that. Why did they do it? What caused it? Was it a mindless act of violence? Was it simply an act of anti-Semitism, as the mainstream media want to portray it as? Or is there more to it than that? In this show, we're going to argue that the causes are more nuanced than what's been said. I would suggest, in fact, that the mainstream media have substantially oversimplified what went on. Not exactly saying wrong things, but saying incomplete things. It might be useful for all of us to understand the true nature of what happened and why it happened, because unless you do have that understanding, it's very difficult to take the right response. There's also a danger, in my view, that the incident will be used to fight other agendas not directly related to what happened in Australia, but nevertheless used to fight wars in other parts of the world. As usual, on a Monday, we've got an internationally renowned investigative reporter. That's Warren Thornton. Good to see you, Warren. How are you doing?
I am fine, thank you, Lembit. And of course, our hearts and thoughts and prayers go out to all the people that have lost their lives on Bondi Beach, and indeed in America at Brown University.
That's right. This one's been such a big assault in Australia, and a rare assault as well. We might want to talk about that a bit. That the other killings in Brown University, where apparently the assailant just walked away afterwards, has been demoted to a footnote. So maybe if we've got time, we'll talk about that too. But let's start with the incident in Australia. I know that in the show that we'll be, if you're watching this live, we'll be broadcasting later on today. We go into quite a lot of detail into what actually happened in that attack. But the big picture here seems to be scores of people wounded, well over a dozen killed by the looks of things, by these two scum, basically, in my view. Regardless of what their motivations were, they are worthless individuals to me. Because whatever their grounds for committing this assault, father and son, I'm told, there's no justification for carrying out this sort of an assault, Warren.
No, absolutely. There isn't under any circumstances whatsoever. The fact that they were targeting a particular group, and not just because, of course, the main problem that we have is when everybody starts throwing shall we say, generalities out there. I think it's very important that we have to know who was targeting who and why. And secondly, not to jump to conclusions and turn around and say, oh, it's Iranians, it's being funded by this people, it's being funded by that. And of course, you are going to get people using that for their own agendas, Lembit.
Okay, so let's start with this. To the best of your knowledge, who are these two misfits?
So to the best of my knowledge, from what we have seen on their social media posts and everything else, these gentlemen were part of a Muslim group called Wahhabi Salafi. Now, Wahhabi Salafism is, shall we say, an offshoot of the sort of Muslims. And of course, they are as way out there as the people that they were actually attacking, which is a group of people from Chabad Lubavitch, which believe in the end times and everything, which are an offshoot of what people would term Zionist or Israeli government. Certainly the two factions that are, shall we say, won't meet in the middle at all, Lembit.
So you're saying, and we'll go into much more detail on this on your show later on, but you're saying essentially that this is these two killers were in one extremist group from the Muslim side, and they were attacking a subset of Judaism, which isn't really Judaism at all. It's Zionism. People always mix the two things up. Judaism is a religion. Zionism is a political creed. But you're saying that the group they attacked were probably almost certainly Jews, but they also had the Zionist agenda.
Absolutely. They're from a sect called Chabad Lubavitch, which, of course, very much back IDF soldiers and what they're doing in Gaza. And the fact that, I mean, nobody, you can see this coming. You can't predict who's going to do it. But the very fact of what's been going on in Gaza should have woken people up to this was going to happen. Now, in an ideal world, Lembit, it shouldn't. But we all know, you and I both discussed this, that there would be some sort of revenge package that would be implemented by someone somewhere. And of course, this is what we've got. This is not ISIS. This is not Al Qaeda. This is not Iran. This is not, the nonsense that's going to come out that this is in some way Hezbollah or linked to Iran. This is an organization that are in effect funded by Saudi Arabia.
That's a pretty big statement. When you say funded by Saudi Arabia, what do you mean?
Okay, so Saudi Arabia has been a major player in the funding of Wahhabism and Salafism. They've made significant investments through official and non-official channels. The Saudi government spent over 75 billion from 1982 to 2005 to establish Islamic colleges, centers, mosques, schools, and of course, should we say, the funding has been aimed at spreading Wahhabism and Salafism, which have been characterized by other people as puritanical and rigid teachings that have influenced various extremist movements, including Al Qaeda and ISIS, but are not them.
I have to say, though, that I hold the individuals who did it responsible, whatever Saudi Arabia's political or spiritual motivations. I'm not going to say that Saudi Arabia told these men to go and kill other people. You're not saying that, are you?
No, what I'm saying is that Saudi Arabia have sponsored these groups in the past. And what I'm trying to do here is give you an indication of if there is teachings out there that along those lines, that there are going to be other bad elements in the world, Lembit, who try to use this for a different agenda. And that agenda being either Iran or, of course, the Yemenis, who are fighting Saudi Arabians in their own country at the moment, or, of course, they'll try and blame Hezbollah. Now, Hezbollah and Iran are nothing to do with this. Neither are the Yemenis. In fact, the Yemenis are fighting these people in their own land.
Well, maybe have a quick chat about that later, because there have been some fairly serious. There's a serious war going on there, and it's not really reported, perhaps because all the Yemenis have is poverty, and dust instead of wealth and oil. Let's talk about the incident. This is where it happened, Bondi Beach, pretty famous to backpackers all over the world. They fired shots from a footbridge and seemed to be at it for quite a while. You're a professional sniper. What's your assessment of the tactics they used?
Well, very simply, I thought it's highly, how can I put it? It's got amateur written all over it. I mean, these aren't guys that go to the range every single day. Now, don't get me wrong, he's got a rifle with a scope on it. Very thing you wouldn't do is go up on a footbridge if you're going to start taking people out. In fact, I was absolutely amazed. There is obviously a video of one of the, should we say, the assailants trying to shoot people from away from the footbridge and eventually goes up on the footbridge. But one has to also praise the absolute bravery while under fire from somebody on the footbridge of one of the members of the public, Mr. Ahmed, who tackled one of the gunmen and actually managed to wrest his automatic weapon from him.
Yeah, it was quite a remarkable, very brave feat. And it's been fairly extensively covered. There's the man after being shot twice, apparently. Yes. And he went for it. I was a bit surprised he didn't actually shoot the assailant, but then it's a big statement. This is what you're talking about. He runs up, knocks the guy down, and basically gets the gun. That's his moment. He could have shot him, but he didn't shoot him. And what do you make of? What would you have done in his position? I'm very sorry to say, Lembit, I would have finished him. I would have taken, as he's disarmed, I would be taking out the guy on the footbridge first. And then, of course, if I have to take him out as he's disarmed, I'll be taking him out as well. But his actions saved many lives today, or yesterday, I should. Yeah, it does seem to me that that's the case. I mean, he got hit himself, probably not fatally, but you can hardly blame the guy for not pulling the trigger.
I mean, Lembit, as somebody who's been in that situation before and in a war and obviously in unarmed combat, for an unarmed man, whilst he, is every chance of him being shot from the footbridge, to go and tackle that man who could have just spun round and shot him at any time, I think is literally, and until you are in that situation, you've no idea what you're going to do. He deserves the highest award Australia can give him.
Yeah, I was truly impressed with him, actually, and that was an act of sheer courage.
It was
a glimmer of humanity in a moment of terror. Now, just an interesting point here. What you're saying is that there are nuances in this. This wasn't just a Muslim shooting a Jew. It was actually a member of or members of some particular group who were specifically targeting members of another group. How do you know? How do you know that these horrible, I use the word again, scum, were part of some other group?
Because we can see all the teachings, and I've managed to get a look at some of their posts and everything else. That it is quite clear from the scholars who were teaching and the books in the bookcase that these are part of the Wahhabi sect. Now, very simply, you can debate all day and you have to debate the nuances of this, because there are actors out there who are going to say very simply, this was once again the persecution of Jews. And don't get me wrong, these people are scum as far as I'm concerned. But we knew something like this was going to happen when you consider the Zionist butchery of the Palestinians in Gaza. The fact that Muslims were not, or a Muslim sect somewhere around the world was not going to commit an atrocity. If anybody thought that wasn't going to happen, well, I've a bridge to sell you, I'm afraid, Lembit. And we should have been more prepared.
Yeah, it's difficult, though. I mean, when you look at Bondi Beach, there it is. It's a huge area. The world's a huge place. We can't have some permanent lockdown. We can't have, and I wouldn't want to have, security guards everywhere all over our land and all over our world, because it seems to be totally defeatist. You lose your freedom if that happens. So, just in terms of the security, you're saying that it's predictable, but it's not predictable where it's going to happen or who is going to do it. We've got 8,000 million people, and some of them are deranged.
Yeah, absolutely. You're quite right. But there are indicators, Lembit, when you let immigrants into your country or whatever country you let them into, and they don't have any identification on them. The fact that we can read people's Facebook posts, we can read their text messages. Someone somewhere should have seen a red flag that would have enabled people to go, we need to keep an eye on them. And I would hazard a guess, Lembit, that sooner or later, further down the line, we're going to find out exactly that.
We don't, well, but I haven't seen, and maybe it's come out and I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that whether they were born in Australia or not. I don't know if they're migrants.
No, exactly that. But this is going to, but once again, this is going to be the thing that is put out there. People are going to ask, were they migrants? Were they Australian citizens? Did they come to the country? If so, how did they get in? If they were known to be Wahhabis, and let's face it, people don't hide. People of the Muslim faith don't hide their tendencies to how they are, and their, shall we say, their deference to God or the teachings or whatever. You're going to tell me that nobody, but one, saw this coming, or two, didn't know that this was a group that would need watching.
Let's come back to that in a minute. You're watching me, Lembit Öpik, with Warren Thornton, investigative journalist based in the Philippines, as it happens, with a fairly encyclopedic understanding of military matters, former sniper in the army. And we're talking about the killings in Bondi Beach over in Australia. And the story so far, it, in my view, is an act of anti-Semitism, but there is a nuance. It seems that the killers were alleged killers. Do I have to say that? I don't know. It's pretty obvious it was them. Were members of a fairly hard-line Islamist sect, and the victims were Zionists. And Zionist is different to Judaism. Zionists often are Jews, but it's a political agenda. Warren Thornton is saying we've got to be careful because he fears that this killing spree will be used in justification for other strategic interventions elsewhere in the world. Before we go back to Warren, though, let me remind you, we've got a great series, sometimes not comfortable viewing, but very important viewing, with Claire Dyer and Dire Consequences. She takes local issues and finds their national significance. Watch this. Claire Dyer with Dire Consequences. Usually, if you're watching it live, Tuesday mornings, 0800 GMT, and also Thursdays at 5 p.m. GMT. But we're going to start increasing the frequency with which we play those because there's a big demand for what she does. Let's return to the subject in hand today. If you're watching this, it's not long after the killing spree at Bondi Beach in Australia and with Warren Thornton. The killing itself was very considerably filmed. And I know on your show you go into quite a lot of detail there. Once again, with your professional experience as a sniper, what do you learn about these people who committed the killings? You've extensively viewed the video.
Yeah, they're quite clearly, shall we say, amateurs. We also had two female Australian police officers who for 20 minutes didn't engage. Now, we don't know whether they were armed or not, but the response time seemed quite shocking. I would be asking questions there. These guys were quite clearly amateurs. Nobody in their right mind, where they are firing from there, that is fairly easy to pick them off. And in fact, if you wanted to do all sorts of, should we say, catastrophic damage, the place for you to be would be down on the beach, where, of course, you literally can't miss. It would be like a turkey shoot. There is no doubt that they were deliberately targeting a group of people. They weren't just shooting indiscriminately at people. It may have turned out like that in the end, because in the fog of war or the fog of battle or the fog of somebody killing somebody, strange things happen to people when you put weapons in their hand. I've seen it only too often myself. But the panic is entirely understandable. When I was looking after people in war-torn areas, when all of a sudden shooting would start and nobody knew which direction or where it was coming from, you would see people who weren't trained for that sort of thing just generally panic and run in all directions, and in some cases toward the gun where the gunfire had actually come from.
Well, I'm hardly surprised. I grew up in Northern Ireland, and I remember hearing shooting very near my house, seeing explosions. It's frightening. No two ways about it. But okay, so these were amateurs, father and son, apparently. Extraordinary that you would do that with your own son. They must have assumed they were going to be shot, though.
Yes, but this is the thing with this group, is they don't, when they die, they're seen as martyrs to the cause, Lembit. The idea, I mean, they knew full well there was no effort to escape at all. They were just going to stay there and carry on until it was all over. There was absolutely no chance that they were thinking of making any escape whatsoever, Lembit. Had they done so, they would have killed who they killed, and then they would have disappeared with somebody driving some sort of getaway car or whatever. They would have been hooded. They certainly wouldn't have had their faces on display. So they knew full well that when they turned up, they weren't going home again.
We could have some debate about whether they thought themselves as martyrs, but I really don't care what they thought of themselves. I don't want to honor them in any way, whatever. As far as I'm concerned, they're common criminals who attacked other human beings, and whatever their views, whatever their intentions, it is completely unacceptable to me. That any dressing up of their cause as being legitimate enough to strike out at the people celebrating some kind of a religious festival is just not acceptable to me. But
I think you're absolutely right there, Lembit. No, and I mean, no way. All I'm trying to do is put flesh on the bones for you. I'm not excusing their actions in any way. At the end of the day, you may have done that because you think, because of what happened in Gaza or whatever. That makes you just as bad as the people that are carrying it out. And there is no excuse for taking another human life, especially to shoot unarmed civilians is quite disgraceful. And I would turn around and abhor and decry their actions. But as far as I'm concerned, these extremist groups, and I don't care which end of the spectrum you are, these extremist groups or people going around killing each other just willy-nilly and slaughtering civilians is absolutely not on, and it is almost becoming something that is not acceptable but justified. And there, you're right, there is no justification for shooting other people, unarmed civilians, in any way, shape or form.
Now, I want to talk about the general question of whether we have a level playing field and how we judge these in a minute. But Benjamin Netanyahu has wasted no time in criticizing the Australian Premier Albanese. I think he's basically said, "Oh well, I warned him." I don't think this is a fair thing to say. 25 million people in Australia. It's an entire continent. Yes. What did he expect Albanese to do?
Oh, this is Netanyahu trying to literally dust off some of the blame. It is one of those throw enough mud at somebody else and hopefully the mud will stick. It's his policies in Gaza that are possibly one could argue are the catalyst for what has happened. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong, Lembit. There have been all sorts of Muslim terrorist activities all around the world, in various places and everything else. But did they think, with their policies in Gaza, that this would make the idea of this happening less likely or more likely?
Yeah, though they can't. Despite my views about Netanyahu and what's happened in Gaza, once again, I can't say that I would blame Netanyahu for what these idiots in Australia did, murderous idiots, because the only way you could argue that is if you implied that an eye for an eye is the way the world works. I don't see that. I don't think that.
No, absolutely, Lembit. But you have to, right, it is a really, really important thing. When you are a soldier or you are somebody who believes, you have to remember that these people are their religion or their ideology, they are zealots. And that all I'm trying to do here is give you an idea of how these people are going to see this. And you cannot, as much as we abhor it, and I abhor it, and so do you, these are the way these people think. And the fact that of his policies in Gaza was always going to make this more likely. Abhorrent as it is, it was always going to be more likely.
Go on.
Yeah, go on, Lembit.
I was going to say, right, we have to separate two things in my view here: catalyst and responsibility. Maybe, I don't know, maybe these murderous fools in Australia were motivated because of what they've seen Netanyahu's policies do in Gaza, but that doesn't make Netanyahu, and I very rarely defend anything Netanyahu does, but it doesn't make Netanyahu responsible for the murder spree in Australia. It might explain why they did it, but it doesn't in any way exonerate these murderers for what they've done.
No, it doesn't. And this is where we have to make a very fine and distinct point. It doesn't exonerate these murdering butchers that have done this. Okay, it really doesn't. But it sure doesn't help the fact that Netanyahu was doing the same thing and getting his IDF soldiers to do the same thing. Did the rest of the world seriously think there would be no consequences for those actions?
Yeah, all right. Well, okay. I still think, for once, I don't lay I have a lot of criticisms about what's happening in Gaza. Maybe we'll come to that. But I don't lay the blame at anyone's door except the people who actually pulled the trigger.
No, exactly that. As far as I'm concerned, Lembit, they're butchers on both sides of the fence. They're both way out wings of what I would call not rational people. And at the end of the day, killing anybody, taking any civilian life, whether you're Hamas, whether you're the IDF, whether you're Russia, whether you're Ukraine, taking a civilian life is abhorrent.
Well, that we can agree. Let's now look at one other area. Question of consistency. You mentioned Yemen before, and one example of something happened about a decade ago. A wedding that became a funeral. U.S. drone attack on marriage procession in Yemen. That same sort of thing has happened in Afghanistan. I think I remember the 67 wedding goers were wiped out in one go in an Afghanistan attack by the United States forces. 67. And I wonder if there's a danger that those who criticize the West could point at double standards in how we treat things like this. America would, of course, say, well, we didn't do it on purpose. These perpetrators did it on purpose. But if your family's been wiped out at a wedding, it might not feel that way.
No, this is where I tried to get my point across, Lembit, and probably haven't explained it in the right way. But allow me to attempt to. So very, very simply, you are a Syrian child or you are an Iranian child, and you come round the corner one day and find that Israel, or you're a Yemeni who's come round the corner one day and find that Saudi Arabia has launched a couple of rockets at your street and has leveled the entire block. Both your parents are dead, and the bad man comes to you and your three brothers and puts a gun in your hand and says, do you want revenge? The human nature, we are all chemical beings. The human nature says that you kill one innocent person, you create more terrorists than you can handle.
Yeah, this is the thing. And then you mentioned Gaza. And I mean, you've seen lots of footage from Gaza. The utter, well, there you are. There's some. utter destruction. It's hard to believe that the wholesale destruction of Gaza would not have an impact. I understand the point you're making, and you'd have to be a truly saintly person to not be affected, to not be angry if the things that you described have happened. And so it leads me to a question. How do we get out of this spiral of violence?
Well, unfortunately, Lembit, at the moment, I don't think we do, because rather than stopping the escalation, there are still many, many people being killed despite the ceasefire. And you have to remember, Lembit, just remember, and it is very difficult to put yourself in the position of somebody, say, from Palestine, who used to have an olive grove or whatever, and he comes home one day and his entire place is taken off him. He's been displaced. He goes to stay with his uncle or whatever in the middle of Gaza City. And if that was your home, how would you feel, Lembit? How would you react if you see babies being killed? Now, I'm not excusing anybody doing it, but you can understand why this might trigger people to pick up a weapon and go and kill other people. And as long as we keep doing this, Lembit, this is going to keep happening. And this is my point. I don't excuse what they did, but it is entirely understandable why they're doing it. I don't excuse when they do it first, and then, of course, they get the reaction, and then they moan about it afterwards. It is a chemical reaction. Every action has a reaction, and the reaction in a time of war is never good. It never brings out the best in people, Lembit, always the worst.
This is a very poignant observation. And once again, something which the mainstream won't dare to say, because they don't seem able to separate the moral rights and wrongs from the psychological realities. I think that's an interesting point, and I think that's one of the learning points for me from today's show. In other words, it's clearly wrong what happened in Australia, but if you don't understand the causes, you're never going to find the solutions. I suppose.
And here's the thing, Lembit. I mean, you look at people say, "Oh, are you pro-Russian?" Because you are saying that the Russians are right in what they're doing. But the Russians are right in what they are saying. I'm not saying they're right in what they're doing. But the upshot of this is we have a bunch of sociopaths who don't care how many Ukrainians die. And I've seen dead people on the battlefield. I do not want to see dead babies in Gaza. I don't want to see dead people dead Israelis on the beach at Bondi. I don't want to see Ukrainians dying because we have a phobia about what we think the Russians might do. And therefore, we're going to beat people up, put them into vans, tear them away. Everybody is somebody's son or father, and you are going to kill them. If you take one life, Lembit, one life, and it is not justified, then I'm afraid you're as big a terrorist as the people you say are terrorists.
Well, yeah, okay. We normally talk about Ukraine. I was going to try and avoid it today, but I see the point you're making in terms of the false conscription, the utterly cynical way in which the Ukrainian forces are dragging people up to the age of 65 off the street, giving them 2 weeks training and sending them to die on the front. This is back to my point. We seem to be in a war-torn world right now.
We are. We've got Thailand and Cambodia. We've had Nepal overthrowing their own government. We've had other governments overthrowing. We've got the EU trying to overthrow governments that they don't like are friendly by having NGOs stage riots and everything else. And we are at a point where, and I don't mean this, well, I do mean this, Lembit. You're a man with compassion. I'm a man with compassion. We have people ruling us at the moment who seem sociopathic, that they don't seem to have any feeling for other human beings that happen to live in a different sphere of influence than they do. It is quite horrific, the hatred that is out there for people of all kinds, from all types of different people. And it has to stop, Lembit, because it only leads to one thing.
That's we saw that thing in Australia. Let's finish with what seems to me an irony. The man who is now in charge of Syria used to have a $10 million bounty on his head. The former jihadist Ahmed al-Shara ended up being welcomed by Trump to the White House. Al-Shara has complicated roots it says here, in the broader Al-Qaeda family. Now, it seems to me the situation is compounded when a man who had a bounty on his head, $10 million bounty on his head, now wears a suit and goes to the White House. I've never been to the White House.
Yeah, absolutely. And Al Jilani, of course, America's dream has been to overthrow Syria. And of course, Ukraine were used as an expendable one to keep Russia busy while they did that. And very soon, and they got rid of Assad, which is something that the Americans have been after for a long, long while. And the problem that we are in the middle of a power struggle between Russia, China, and America, Lembit. And the Americans are not going to go quietly. The Russians are not going anywhere. The Chinese aren't going to go anywhere. And there is a power struggle around the globe through NGOs and through lots of different mechanisms to try and get control and power of not only control power, but also resources as well. Anybody who believes for 1 second that Venezuela are flooding America with so many drugs that the Americans can't stand, it's literally, I've got a bridge to sell you. There are resources out there, Lembit, and of course there is a battle between the three key superpowers for who has those resources, and everybody else, including Europe, where we're now paying America almost double or 3 times as much for our oil, and of course buying all our weapons from them, while our economies go down the toilet, and other countries get their governments overthrown. And we are in a real bad, shall we say, state of affairs at the moment, Lembit, and we can only hope some people or people that come into power later on can fix this, because at the moment it seems like we're living in a new dark age.
Is there anything we can learn from what we're seeing here? Donald Trump welcoming a former terrorist, I suppose, and these people shooting with intent to kill. Is there anything we can learn from this?
Yes, there is. So we have to learn to get along and get rid of these people, whether they be Hamas, whether they be Zionism, whether it be neo-Nazis, whatever. I think it's absolutely imperative that Russia, China, and America get round the table and agree on spheres of influence, and not to interfere in the spheres of influence of those countries. But I'm afraid of all the countries, and I don't excuse China or Russia either, but America are not going to wear that hat.
Well, thanks for cheering us up. Where can we get more cheery perspective from Warren Thornton?
Well, of course, we always have something at the end of the show to cheer people up, because we don't like to depress them too much. But if you want a dose of the truth, warrenthornton.com or Warren Thornton on Patreon between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. every single weekday. And, of course, on Sundays, 7 p.m. To 9 p.m. and, of course, on Unprecedented with the wonderful Lembit Öpik.
Thank you for saying that's all Greenwich Mean Time as well, GMT, the time 6 to 8 weekdays and 7 till 9 on Sundays. And you can see a rerun of parts of those shows, sometimes the whole show, usually at 11 a.m. GMT on Unprecedented TV. We say thank you to Warren Thornton. Heavy duty conversation, but it has to be had. Just to summarize then, it seems that according to Warren, the killers in Australia were actively involved in quite an extremist group, and they targeted the others with intent to kill because they so extremely disagreed with them. Also anti-Semitic? I would say it is, but it's more nuanced than that. And if we don't understand the nuances, we can't really get the solutions. We live in a dark time, my friends, but it's our duty to report it. Your only responsibility is to think about what we should do. Perhaps if collectively we find the intelligence to do better, then our servants, also known as politicians, will have to listen. Have a good day.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.